Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first installment of our 2025 NFL draft grades, where we're going to be going in depth on not each and every pick, but most pick these teams have made and their fit not only with the team, but within the scheme. And maybe not even their fit, but how they don't fit. Anyway, the niche with this series is that I'm going to be having a different creator on for each video, for each division. And to start us off today, we have Taggartkent, aka Tag, a resident Dallas Cowboys fan. How are you doing today, Tag?
Yeah, unfortunate resident Dallas Cowboys fan. I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I'm glad. I'm glad, but not glad the draft is over. There's always the excitement of seeing the draft day actually happen, but now that we don't have to scout and look up a random person from Eastern Michigan,
Oh,
I feel a lot better.
don't get me started. I started so late too, so like for the last month or two, I was just grinding them out like 6 a day. I was miserable for a couple days, for a couple weeks it was.
Yeah, no, there are some miserable days in there, but we finally got to see these players get drafted, the funnest part of it all. And we're actually going to start with the Dallas Cowboys, your team, the team that you're a fan of. And I'm going to let you take the reins. We're going to go pick by pick.
Okay.
I guess something I should mention is we're only mainly going to be talking about the picks between rounds 1 and round 4. If we deem necessary that there is a player we want to talk about in the 5th round, 6th, 7th rounds, we will talk about them. But we didn't watch every player. Unfortunately, we're not sure who the 7th round pick out of backup running back out of Arizona is. Unfortunately, we were not fully aware. So we don't want to give you some bullshit analysis and just random stuff. So we're going to talk about the guys we deem necessary. But we're going to start with the Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys here, their first round pick in Tyler Booker at 12th overall. What is your grade for that, Tag?
Yeah, a lot of people completely outraged, excuse me, by this one. Night of. I felt like I was the only one that kind of liked it. Overall, I have it written down somewhere. I believe I gave it an A minus. No, I gave it a B plus. Just because enjoy Tyler Booker as a player, strong guy, maybe not the most athletic guard coming out of the class. A lot of people like Grady Zabel a little more, but he's strong. It's a little interesting because Alabama runs a lot of gap runs, power counters, and things of that nature. Cowboys, they don't. It's a lot of wide zone, a lot of inside zone. So it's interesting to see how he'll kind of adjust to that. But I'm looking at the division right now. This is a division with the Eagles, who just won a Super Bowl because of their defensive line. The Giants, who picked Abdul Carter at the top of the draft, who already had a good defensive line. This is a lot of teams that are building in the front. And so I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea for the Cowboys to go guard in the first round here, especially with the departure of Zach Martin. A lot of people thought Brock Hoffman or TJ Bass, a lot of our UDFAs could have replaced him. And they're good run defenders, but what separates Tyler Booker from the rest of them is that he can pass protect. And I think a team that's going to need to pass the ball well is going to pass the ball well if they have a successful season. I don't think it's a bad idea to take a player that I think is good in Tyler Booker. Maybe you should have argued that they should have traded down, but somebody's got to trade up to want to do that. And who knows if Tyler Booker would have still been there if that was really their guy. Take him. But yeah, no, I didn't hate the pick as much as others. I kind of liked it, and I think it's a good idea to build in the trenches.
Yeah, and I'm with you. My grade on Booker was a B minus simply because I was a bit lower on Booker. He was around the 27th player on my board and definitely not my best guard. I did like Gray Zabel a good bit more, especially in this scheme. You bring up a lot of that inside zone and that wide zone. I don't think Booker has the athleticism to succeed as well as maybe definitely would be a lot better in a gap scheme. But
Yeah.
that being said, Booker's a good player. Tyler Booker's a very high floor player at the end of the day. You mentioned that pass protection. He comes in as a damn good pass protector off the rip. So maybe he's not the perfect scheme fit, and maybe I would have taken another guard and Gray Zabel above him. But at the end of the day, we're trying to replace a Hall of Fame level guard right now,
Yeah.
and that
Franchise.
would have been sorely missed. And at the end of the day, I do think Tyler Booker makes this offense, makes this team better. So I'm not going to give it any lower than a B, although it is not the pick I would have made at guard.
Yeah, a couple things worth noting too is one, Zach Martin wasn't that great last year, and so maybe our UDFA's did play better than him, but still, Tyler Booker, a good player. But the second thing I wanted to notice is that in the 6th round, they took a Johnny Cornelius, who's another guy who's not like the best lateral mover, in my opinion. I watch a lot of Oregon football, so he's a guy that would work better in a gap scheme. So I wonder if they're thinking about moving to a gap running scheme, and that's why they've taken a lot of these less athletic tackles and guards. That was one where I looked at it and they drafted, and I was like, huh, are they changing it up? They haven't hinted at it, but they could
That
be.
that's interesting, and I think it's something we could. It makes their pick of another player in this draft a tad confusing to me if they were
Uh-huh.
leaning towards a gap scheme. But hey, if there's any players to do it with, it's Tyler Booker and
Yeah,
Cornelius. Man, those are some stout individuals who can move people around.
yeah.
But going into their second pick of this draft, we have differing opinions. We talked on
Yep.
Twitter about this. We have differing opinions on this player, but Donovan Izuraku. Uh, again, this is your team. I'm gonna let you give the first grade. What is your grade on Izuraku?
I have come down a little bit on it. I still have my thoughts on Donovan. I gave it a B minus. My problem with Ezraku is not that I think he's like a bad player. I just think there isn't much of a ceiling there. I kind of think he comes into the league and he's just always going to be what he is. He has an unbelievably deep bag. His ankle flexion is ridiculous. He bends around the corner and flat lines and sacks quarterbacks off of speed rushes tremendously. It's up there with Abdul Carter and Mike Green in this class. And, I mentioned the deep bag, but here's my thing with Ezeraku. If he was, I called him a mid-athlete on Twitter, and people called me out for it. It's like, oh, you're stupid. You don't know what you're looking at. If he was this great athlete with the quick first step and the change of direction skills of an Abdul Carter, do you really think he'd be available at pick 44?
No, sir.
No.
And
He would be one of the first 5 players taken.
Mm-hmm.
Comfortably. Very comfortably.
Now, I would make some. I'm not quite as high. I think was it Theo who said he was like a top 10 player in the class. I'm not quite that high, but like some might argue he should have gone that high.
Yeah. No, but after the fact, I kind of looked at the board and I looked at what was available, and I was like, he was probably the best player on the board. Maybe you argue Nick Scorton, but again, I'm never going to be mad that they're taking edge. We don't have a pass rusher outside of Micah right now, on the edge at least. Some people, Oso Azua is a good pass rusher, but plays more 3-tech. And yeah, so I don't hate it as much as I did originally, just because I saw the name and I was just like, ugh, boring. But I think he'll end up being pretty nice for them, and he's probably their second best pass rusher day one.
Yes, and you bring up. I will be the first person to say I don't think Izaraku is an overwhelming athlete. I don't know if mid's the word, but it's not too far off. It really isn't. You aren't drafting Izaraku for his athleticism. You're drafting him because he's a high floor player, because he's such a lengthy player who understands how to use hands. The pass rush moves, everything from a ghost rush, cross chop, his spin move is devastating. He comes out of the box as a very, very high floor pass rusher, and he reminds me a bit of I don't know how high you were on Latu last year. I wasn't compared to a lot of people. I saw him as like a really high end edge too. That's exactly what I think Donovan Izaraku is going to be. And when you look at who he's going to be an edge 2 and Micah Parsons, I think that's a very good fit, and it fits this scheme. I really can't imagine a better landing spot for Izaraku, if I'm being completely honest. I think this makes a ton of sense. While he's not the greatest run defender in the world, which I'm sure Cowboys fans want some run defenders on that defensive line, the idea of him being a high-end edge 2 next to maybe the premier edge 1 at some point this year, that's a big deal, I think. Yeah. I think that's a very good pick for this Cowboys defense.
Yeah, you'll ask a lot of people that are familiar with my tweets how much I wanted Shamar Stewart at 12.
Yes.
Not a lot of people agreed with
this. But then we get to... So actually then, let me ask. If you had the option, knowing what the Cowboys did taking Tyler Booker, would you still say Shamar Stewart at 12 is the better pick?
Yeah. I think he was best player available there.
Okay. All right. And I don't disagree. I do think Shamar Stewart was a better player than Tyler Booker. I would have rather seen that. I think putting a heavier, already A+ run defender opposite of Micah Parsons, who, as great as Micah Parsons is not the greatest run defender on the planet, unfortunately, because he's not that big. So putting that bigger run defending defensive end across from him, I think would have made a lot of sense.
Yeah, I really hated that idea that like Shamar Stewart was this developmental prospect. He's a developmental pass rusher. Day one,
Yes.
you put him on the Cowboys, it's not even close. He's the best run defender on the team. He's in another stratosphere to compare to everybody else on that defensive line, and that's why I wanted him so much.
Yeah, and Elite Takes or Nico talked about it. It's very, very much like it's Trayvon Walker. It's exactly what Trayvon Walker was. Trayvon Walker was great run defender, and he's developed pass rush back, and he went first overall.
Yeah,
So,
and now he's got 2 back-to-back double-digit sack seasons.
there you go.
Cooper, for sure.
So then we get to the third pick, and this was awesome in my opinion. I was a big Ravel fan, but they picked Siobhan Ravel in the third round. This is going to get an A from me. What is your grade on Ravel?
I gave it an A+. This was the top.
I was close
in the class for me. Taking it 70 something.
Yeah, ridiculous value.
Yeah, and he fits well with what I think Eberflus wants to do too. It's a lot of cover 3, cover 4. He's long, he's strong. It's very smart too. His 2023 tape is a very fun watch. I know not a lot of people are watching Eastern Carolina football, but he is a very fun player to watch, and I think he fits well with Flus. And I understand that there's injury concerns, torn ACL, but in modern medicine, I really don't think that's that big of a deal as it was maybe 14 years ago with the Derrick Rose, whatever.
That seems to be the trend with this draft. Is teams need to realize that we do live in a world of modern medicine. We can take some of these players a little earlier than I think they should not have gone as late as they did. But I agree with Johnson. Like Will Johnson. Don't get me started. That NFC West video is going to get me heated. Don't you worry. But I agree. I think Ravel is a very good fit here. I think he comes out as somebody who can compete for that corner 2 spot immediately. But I do also envision him as a bit of a developmental prospect because he has all of those traits and the ball skills. It's just about a matter of really refining that technique that comes along with it. I also don't think he's in a necessary spot where, like, if he's not exactly ready to go as the day one opposite corner of Trayvon Diggs, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. I think you're okay stashing him until he's ready and then potentially having one of the better corner duos in football with Diggs and Ravel.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting we still have Deron Bland, but the cool thing about taking Revel is if Diggs does come back healthy, he plays opposite of Diggs, and you move Deron Bland back to the slot, which is where he started his career. Exactly. And so it's looking like a really scary cornerback room, which is good because that's something that an Eberflus defense really needs when we're talking about 4-man rushes all day, which is a change of pace from Dan Quinn and his philosophy.
Yes, and I mean, look at what the Bears did when he was there. You know, Jalen Johnson. I'm blanking on the rest of their names, but there's Kyler Gordon, Tyreek Stevenson. Thank you very much. They put a lot of draft capital into their corners, and they put a lot of emphasis on that.
As they should.
Yes, as you should. And then we get to their 5th round pick, I should say.
Our 4th round pick was Jonathan Mingo, in case you're curious.
Yeah, your 4th round pick was Jonathan Mingo, which definitely on the lower end of grade.
Can I get that F?
We can give that an F. It sucks because I loved Mingo coming out of that draft too. And he just isn't good.
Yeah,
he's just not a good football player. Anyway, going to their 5th round pick, which will count as their 4th. We do have Jaden Blue, the running back out of Texas. I'd love to hear your opinion on Blue because I know there's a lot of differing ones.
I was kind of in the middle. I hate to say that I'm always like a middle grounder with most players. Shout out to Splash on TikTok and Twitter. He loves Jaden Blue, and he kind of talked me into him a little more. He's very fast, explosive athlete. He's just, I don't want to put this to right. He's kind of dumb. He kind of just knows one speed. There's really no patience with him for me. But the thing about the Cowboys running back room is Zeke, Tony Pollard over the last couple of years. Rico Dowdle last year, they have not had this kind of speed in the room, and I've been begging for it. And so it's nice to finally see a dude who does have that kind of blazing speed. I think low end, he's a change of pace back, and then high end, he does have some receiving skills. If he can develop a little more of some hands, he does have this opportunity to be like a really, really reliable 3rd down back. He has a catch against, it might be Georgia or somebody. It's a wheel route where I think it's Ewers throws it to him in the corner of the end zone, and he makes a really nice grab, and he kind of flashes that ability to be a really, really good third down back, which I think is something that with Dak Prescott, a guy who likes to throw quick, and it's 1-2 and get out for him, I think he could be a really reliable target for him.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I stand on blue. What was your grade on that, by the way?
That one I gave it's on the other side. I gave it a B minus. You did
Nice. I gave it a C plus, so we're about the same range there. I see blue as more of a scat back, as you say, a third down guy. Definitely not somebody I envision being a guy who carries the ball 20 times a game.
Yeah.
And this is that thing we brought up earlier, where maybe if we're talking about them going more towards a gap scheme with Booker, Blue's a zone runner the whole way through. You don't want Blue within a gap scheme. So the drafting of Blue leads me to believe that they're not doing that, but you never know.
Yeah.
The thing that bothers me a bit is just, and this will go for a couple backs, but specifically in Blues, there's a handful of better running backs on the board, in my opinion. If you wanted a scat back, I think the guy the Chiefs got in the 7th round and Rashard Smith was a better scat back, in my opinion. And I think the more important one is I think Damian Martinez would have been a fantastic.
Where did he go? Did he go on the 7th? I feel like
7th to the Seahawks, which is crazy. A lot of people had him as a top 50 player on their board. I didn't, but I had him a lot more than a 7th round pick. I'll tell you that. So, but I don't hate it, don't love it. C plus from me, not too offensive.
That's kind of where I liked it a little bit more though, because in the 7th round they took Phil Maffa out of Clemson. And so I could see that being a nice little thunder lightning situation where I don't see either of them being like true bell cows taking 20, 25 rushes a game. But as a tandem, I think I could like that 2-3 years down the line. And so I liked that pick a lot too. And it made me like the Jaden Blue pick a little more.
Right. And the last pick I want to talk about is at the top of the 7th round, they picked Jay Tola out of UCLA. And he is your stereotypical really big nose tackle who's not going to get moved around much. Is he going to do much more than that? No. He has one role, and that's what he plays. And I do think there's a world where this does, even if it's a little bit, improves their run defense.
Yeah, it's much needed, by the way, to anybody who doesn't watch Cowboys football. Yeah, we haven't had a big dude who's 340 pounds in a while. The closest we had to it is Jonathan Hankins, and I think Jonathan Hankins was like 330, 335. But he was really good for us, and our run defense was a lot better when he was on the field. And so hopefully he can do anything close to what Hankins did. But, 7th round pick, we'll see. I haven't watched him too much. I don't want to comment on him like I know
exactly
fully. But
exactly. I haven't watched a ton of him. I just understand what his role is, and the Cowboys needed it. That's all I know. All right, Tag. So what is the letter grade you would give overall to this Cowboys draft class?
So I have two. I have a cumulative one, and then I have one that's just like player independent, just regardless of just where they were drafted and who was ahead of them. Player independent was an A minus. I think it's a really, really good draft. But then cumulative, it was a B. There were maybe some different value things I didn't like. Donovan Ezeraku, Tyler Booker, but I still think the players that they got were really nice, and I think a lot of them are going to be day one contributors.
I do think that top of the draft, the picks you're supposed to hit on, they hit on, and for me, that means I'm going to give them a B plus. I do think as it got later, the talent pool dwindles down once you get into the 5th round. So it's hard to diminish their grade because of that. But I don't think their day 3 was overly great. Yeah. But I do think their first 2 days is enough to make this a B plus on my end.
Yeah, I agree.
But now, moving on to the Philadelphia Eagles, who also drafted a lot of players. The other 2 teams in this class did not do that. But a lot of players by this Eagles team. Unfortunately, had a pretty damn good draft in my eyes. And to start us off, the pick of Jahad Campbell at 31. This is going to get an A+.
How do they keep getting away with it, man?
Other football teams are really dumb, and they're not, is how I would say it. It's ridiculous how far Jahad Campbell fell. This was, I don't know how high it was for you. I know I was higher on him the most. He was my 6th overall player. Mm-hmm. I thought he was an incredible prospect with the ability to be like a Fred Warner level off-ball linebacker, like a truly elite guy.
Yeah.
And now you've set him next to the guy who was a first-team All-Pro linebacker in Zach Bond in front of that defensive line with Vic Fangio as his head coach. There's just no way on earth this guy doesn't turn into one of the more elite linebackers that we'll see in the NFL for the next couple years. And they get him at 31.
Yeah.
So
a guy in Zach Bond that he gets comped to a lot. I saw Ted Nguyen comped him to Zach Bond, which I think is a decent one. Yeah, I had Jihad Campbell as the 14th player on my board. And he kind of fits what I think athletically Vic Fangio wants to do. I think he has a little bit to go as just instinctually, which as I got something Fangio teaches very well. Zach Bond has incredible instincts. There's not a bad group there for him to learn from. I think it's the perfect landing spot for him, and I think it's insane that he fell to 31. I thought stealing for him was at 18 to the Bengals, and he falls all the way to the back half of the first round. Interesting that they traded up to. I wonder if somebody was trying to jump them for him, and they ended up outbidding them. But yeah, just an insane fit for them, an unbelievable player, and of course, they get another steal, which it seems like they do once a year at this point from an SEC school.
Yep. Something to bring up about Campbell, too, is that he also provides, for those who don't know, a bit of edge flexibility as well, because he was the number one edge recruit coming out of high school. And he got moved to off-ball linebacker because that edge group at Alabama was so loaded. But he's put together some pretty good tape, and for a team that just lost Josh Sweat, and while he won't be a full-time edge rusher, he will be an off-ball guy for this team. The fact that you have the opportunity of getting some juice off the edge in a player like Campbell, I think is a big deal. But when he got to 18 and 19, which is the Seahawks and Buccaneers respectively, I was like, he's gone within one of those two picks. One of those two teams have to pick him. And when they passed on him, well, they made some good picks. At least the Seattle did, in my opinion. Buccaneers is a little weird. I gave it an F. I'm not like
Really?
at least when it happened, I gave it an F, I should say. I've cooled down. It's not an F. It's still not a very high grade though. So,
no, I wouldn't give it either. Yeah, Jihad Campbell is almost like the reverse Jalen Walker. Jalen Walker is the hybrid that I think is better at edge. Jihad Campbell is the hybrid that I think would be better at off-ball linebacker.
Yeah. But then we get to their second round pick in Andrew Makuba. And this is just another A. It's not going to be an A plus this time, but they got a damn good player for some damn good value. Tell me a little bit about Andrew Makuba.
Yeah, I gave that one a B plus. Just because he's a little small, but he is an insane athlete. The way he kind of I wish he was a bit better instinctually, but when he does see the ball being thrown, reads the quarterback's eyes well, and just like twitch and boom.
Mm-hmm.
An incredibly hard hitter. I think he's going to fit well in this offense or defense as well. And look, the team needed a CJ Gardner-Johnson replacement. I think a couple years from now, Andrew Makuba could be a very, very good CJ Gardner-Johnson replacement, and almost like a similar role, just because neither of them are like insane coverage-wise. Although Makuba is not a slouch out there, but they are good athletes and they do hit hard, and he's got a bit of nastiness to his game that GJ does as well. And so I really did like that one too. I think it's the Stay Hot Boys had him first round talent. I wasn't quite that high on him. That's why I kind of is a B plus, but I do still think round 2, pick 32, that's an insane pick and another steal from them.
Yeah, he was right outside of my top 50. So to get him at 64, I think was great value. Makuba, I'm glad you brought up CJ Gardner-Johnson, because that's what this feels like. This feels like the CJ Gardner-Johnson replacement, as well as just being a fantastic fit in this Fangio scheme. I think he can play the 2 high very, very well. I thought he played it well in college when he needed to. I think you're looking at a player with some very, very good ball skills from the DB position. I love the fit of Makuba in a Fangio-style defense, specifically this one, where, again, he's going to take over that enforcer CJ Gardner-Johnson role, as well as having the opportunity to play one of the 2 high safeties. And then we get to their 4th round pick in Ty Robinson. And again, I think this is good value. It's not going to be as high as the other 2 picks, but I'm going to give this a B. I'm curious to see where you're at on him.
Yeah, Ty Robinson, not a guy that I watch too much. I was slacking on defensive tackles, because there's so many of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I read a little bit about him. I watched him a little this morning. just seems like good depth. I gave that one a B minus, I think. Yeah, I gave it a B minus. Just good depth on a defensive line that lost Milton Williams and Josh Sweat this offseason. I imagine a lot of some of those other guys, like Nolan Smith, end up taking their roles, and he kind of takes more of a backup defensive line role. Good run defender. I don't know what his ceiling is like as a pass rusher, and he's not like the strongest guy, so I don't know if he's going to be the best edge setter, but he's very smart, he's very patient, and he's a very good understanding of technique. And so I don't think he'll ever be like an awful player where you see him on the field and you're like, please get him off. But I don't know if he's ever like, I think he's a fourth round pick. I don't know if he's ever Jay Carter.
Absolutely. And, I went and watched Ty Robinson after he put up a good combine. And I didn't watch a ton. I watched enough to have an opinion. I kind of compared him to a lesser Braden Fisk, a much lesser, Braden Fisk went in that second round. Ty Robinson deservedly win the fourth. I think he's got less juice than him. But again, you're looking at a really high effort defensive tackle that is fine against the run. Again, high effort when it comes to actually rushing the passer. There's not a ton of like immediate wins or great pass rush moves, but he's constantly pushing the pocket, constantly chasing the quarterback. And part of that lack of fast wins is his shorter arms. They're about 32 inches. It's actually quite interesting when you see a photo of him. It's this massive, massive individual, and the arms are just a little stubby.
T-Rex.
He looks a little bit like a T-Rex, but I like the idea of we'll use Braden Fisk in quotation marks here on this defense as a rotational piece, again, just a guy you can trust to go in there, eat up as a run defender, and at least could put in some effort as a pass rusher. So this is going to get a B from me. Other notable names. One name I do want to bring up is Mac McWilliams, simply because I don't like the pick. I did actually watch a little Mac McWilliams, and I did not think he was very good. I guess they drafted him because he's a bit traitsy, in the sense of his combine, at least, where he ran a 4.40.
He's a little small though.
But I think traitsy was the wrong word, because despite him having some athletic tools, he's just like so small for a corner. 5'10", he's got 29-inch arms, which is really short for an NFL corner. I don't think particularly has good ball skills. I think his long speed, despite what the 40 says, I think his long speed is put into question. I saw him get beat deep a good amount. I really did not enjoy the pick. I gave it a D+. I didn't give it it's hard for me to give any player picked rounds 5 and onward anything lower than like a C, because it's round 5. But I do think Mac McWilliams was like an undrafted level player that picked a bit too high for my liking.
Yeah, he feels like a nickel corner that comes on the field on running downs to give your coverage nickel corner a break, because he's a pretty good tackler. The nickel corner they have is also a pretty good tackler. Don't know if you guys have heard of him, Cooper DeJean. He's pretty good at playing the run. So I didn't really get that one either. A lot of these picks down the board just feels like good depth. Cameron Williams, I know how much they love their athletes to tackle. That's a good athlete. Smile Mondon feels like a good, like if Jahan Campbell never develops instinctually as a run defender, this is a guy who's going to play on early downs. Like, this is your run defending linebacker. Jahan Campbell comes on the field on third down as your pass coverage guy or pass rusher or wherever you want to feel him. But yeah, a lot of their 5th round and on was a lot of depth, and that Mac Williams was a bit confusing, because I really don't feel like there should be an excuse to take Cooper DeJean off of the field. So.
Yeah, exactly. But one other guy I really, really wanted to mention was their pick of Cameron Williams over in what was that?
That's the end of the 6th round.
6th round? Yeah, I didn't know if it was 7th or 6th. But Cameron Williams, interesting piece. This was somebody who was being talked about as potentially a first-round pick at the start of this draft process. Unfortunately, did not live up to that hype, and pretty clear he probably should have stayed in school for another year.
Yeah.
But can't think of a better place to go for Cameron Williams. This is a very traitsy, big defensive tackle, offensive tackle that has a lot of tools and traits. It's just about consistency with Cameron Williams. And Statland University, if you're trying to learn to become a good offensive lineman, this is where you do it.
Yeah.
And the fact that they take him, no incentive or rush to start him whatsoever. If they develop him and he looks good enough to maybe come in and replace a guy like Lane Johnson once he retires, great. If not, hey, at least you took a chance on a guy who has the traits, and it makes sense to get him into this system.
Yeah, it feels like the perfect landing spot for him, to be honest.
Yes. Last one I'll say is Kyle McCord. I actually liked McCord, so I'm a little sad he went to this Eagles team where I'm not even sure he wins the backup job, because I do think Tanner McKee and him are extremely similar players. So just wanted to mention that he was drafted. They did draft a quarterback.
Yeah.
Kyle
McCord exists. He exists.
McCord does exist on this Eagles team, and he will.
He is a guy I actually wanted the Cowboys to take as a backup, but they ended up grabbing Joe Milton, which
he's somebody. He's somebody I wanted the Dolphins to take as a backup, and we got Quinn Ewers, man. I am a known Quinn Ewers hater, so that'll come up. That'll come up in that video. But now, what was the overall grade that you gave?
I gave them a B+ as the overall grade, and the cumulative was also a B, just a tick below the Cowboys, just because I feel like their day 30 talent wasn't as good as what the Cowboys got. There was a little more high ceiling stuff there, whereas the Cowboys, I feel like, got a little more people that could be day one contributors. But the top of the class was just so good that I kind of looked over some of the shots that they took late on day 3.
Yeah, for me, I am going to give it an A- because of that top of the class. I do think the value you'd get for Jahad Campbell at 31 is just ridiculous.
Is that best value in the class, in your opinion?
No, it's the pick after was Simmons Simmons to the Chiefs. And you can argue maybe not because of that injury history, but also that was the 5th overall player on my board ahead of Campbell. It filled a massive need. And again, we live in a world of modern medicine. I think he's going to be all right. So that was probably the best value pick in the whole draft to me. But Jahad Campbell's right after.
Yeah.
Going to the New York Giants and their draft, much less players to talk about here. But definitely it sucks because I think this was a really good draft outside of one just abysmal awful.
You look at the first pick, 3rd pick, damn, that's pretty good. 3rd round pick, that's good. 4th round pick, damn, okay. 5th round pick is pretty good. But then you look at their 2nd first round pick, and it's like, I don't know what to think, because the rest of this draft is amazing. And then they took probably the biggest reach in the class at number 25 with Jackson Dart.
One of the biggest reaches I've personally ever seen. Yeah. I know some people are even just like, oh, I'm not that high on him, but he's a 3rd round pick. Yeah, I'm not even there. I think Jackson Dart is a day 3 quarterback every day of the week. We'll get to Dart when we get there. Let's give them their flowers first and foremost. Abdul Carter at pick 3. It is an A+ from me. I get it. They made the right pick, but they didn't reach on a quarterback here, at least. And they get a borderline generational edge rusher in my eyes.
Yeah.
Abdul Carter.
They started the draft, and I was like, good. They're not going to reach on a quarterback. They're not going to force anything this year. And then they ended up doing it anyway. But yeah, Abdul Carter, a lot of people were concerned about maybe his fit with Brian Burns just because they're kind of similar as prospects. But I don't think it's a bad idea to get another incredible pass rusher on your defensive line, especially when you're in a division with the Eagles, who have a good defensive line that they won a Super Bowl with and a good offensive line. And they have so many looks that they can throw at, especially with their 3rd round pick now as well. Dexter Lawrence, Kayvon Thibodeau, who a lot of people think sucks. He's not the best player, but go Ducks. And then Brian Burns, Abdul Carter off the edge. This is a dangerous defensive line. And if you want to win a Super Bowl, the way you did it in the early 2010s was that defensive line. And so they're following that blueprint. I think this is a fantastic pick. A lot of people's number 1 player in the class. I didn't have him quite that high, but still the best edge rusher in the class by far. And you can never go wrong with getting another pass rusher.
Right. This was my number 2 player in this class. And I'm glad that you brought up the rest of that defensive line, because while maybe there might be concern for the lighter edge rushers on this team, on some other teams, I think having a player like Dexter Lawrence, who makes up that mass that you're losing, a player that you can have on the field every down, debatably, I mean, he's not the best defense player in football. I think that belongs to Myles Garrett right now. But he's close. He's close, man. He's an unbelievable defensive tackle. And now having just play. Now, this is all about stopping the run, and then you get to third down. And then you've got Abdul Carter and Brian Burns teeing up and causing havoc. I am, and think about the rest of the defensive guys they've added. Again, their third round pick, who we'll get to. But not only that, hold on a sec. But not only that, they add Javon Holland in free agency. They add Paulson Adebo in free agency. Suddenly, this defense is looking
pretty damn good,
really good, like really good. And I hate to give Giants fans false hope, but like this, I'm kind of really liking what this defense is handing out right now.
Me too. I like what they're building in general, and you know what? This is a fan base over the last couple of years that has really gone through it, especially in this division. Let them have false hope, even if it's false. There's
right.
nothing wrong with hope, although maybe the worst thing you can have is hope. I think this defense has. I really like Javon Holland. Like I said, I'm an Oregon fan. It's maybe you could argue why let go of Xavier McKinney if you're just going to bring in a safety next year. I think they're slowly learning the direction that they want to go with this team, and I think that the picks that they made are very encouraging, and I think sneaky wild card contender this year.
Ooh. We really like this we really like this defense, I should say. This offense, not so much. Now we get to the pick that brings down what could be like borderline, not an A. It's close to being an A+ draft. It's close if you take out this pick. Unfortunately, this pick exists, and it is them trading up to 25 to select quarterback Jackson Dart out of Ole Miss. This is going to get a D-. It's not. I want to give it an F, but I'm going to refrain. It's better. Hey, an F would be better than when I gave it on TikTok when it happened. I gave it a shit emoji on TikTok. So,
give it a C grade.
Yeah, it was not good. But it will be a D- from me. Listen, when it comes to Dart, I understand there are intangibles there. I mean, he's got good size. He's got good mobility. The arm is good. When he understands what he's throwing at, I think he's a relatively accurate quarterback. Like, there are absolutely traits to take a bet on and develop and potentially turn into a guy someday. Do I think those traits are anywhere near good enough to take at the end of the first round? Not at all. And not only that, you look at a quarterback who wasn't required to read a defense in college, didn't take actual dropbacks in college, way too many RPOs and screens that you had to throw away half the film. The dude doesn't even do a snap count. He claps. We all saw that Gruden clip.
We call it purple.
Like, no. There is the floor for Jackson Dart is as low as it can get.
Yeah.
You are entering the NFL with no. I think the hardest thing to do as a quarterback entering the next level is understanding how to read a defense, because defenses are just that much faster than they are in college. When you're entering the NFL with a baseline 0 on how to read a defense, I think that's really difficult to overcome.
Yeah.
But I do like Brian Daboll. If this is Brian Daboll's guy, maybe it's like, hey, maybe you do put a little trust in what he's doing. But I can't give it anything more than a D-. And the only reason it's not getting an F is that they didn't pick him at 3.
Yeah.
At least they traded up into the first round to get him later on, and they didn't forego Abdul Carter for that. If they forgoed Abdul Carter for Jackson Dart, it may have been the singular worst pick in NFL history.
Yeah, I think I would give it that moniker too, even if, I don't know. Jackson Dart, you talked about him not having much true dropback situations, and even in the situations he did, he looked horrible.
He was bad. He was really bad.
Good. And it doesn't even seem like there's much to work with here. Everybody talks about, oh, he's a good athlete. He's got a strong arm. His arm ain't that good. He's not Josh Allen throwing the football down the field. He's got an okay arm. It's pretty good. It's not alien enough.
It's above average, is as much as I would give it.
And even athletically, he's a good athlete. He's not insane. He's not even more athletic than Daniel Jones. His comp to me was Daniel Jones.
He feels like a Daniel Jones.
To the Giants. You mentioned the Brian Daboll thing. Brian Daboll does have the track record developing Josh Allen, making Daniel Jones look somewhat serviceable. I don't think that it's impossible for him to have somewhat of a resemblance of success with the Giants. I think he's always the worst quarterback in the division. And you're talking about a division with a Super Bowl winner, Jalen Hurts, and MVP candidate and Rookie of the Year, and Jaden Daniels, and then another guy who was an MVP candidate a couple years ago, and Dak Prescott. I just think you're always going to have the worst quarterback in the division. And what's the ceiling with that there? I gave them a D, and I think the trade up in the first round, I actually don't hate it that much, because if Jackson Dart is ever good, it's because he develops well in a couple of years, and having that fifth year option, from being drafted in the first round is definitely beneficial. So you don't have to pay him like you did Daniel Jones, even though he also had the fifth year option, but just paying him that much money is what I mean. Maybe Jackson Dart does develop and we all look stupid.
I'd be happy.
Wouldn't bet on it.
I'd be happy. But
yeah.
I wouldn't bet on it. No.
And we'd have to call Brian Daboll the QB whisperer, because that is an insane group of quarterbacks to develop.
Insane group of quarterbacks to develop. You take out Josh Allen and it's just like two dudes.
Yeah. Daniel Jones and Jackson Dart. Wow.
But then we get to their third round pick. Well, is this second or third that it would
This is third round, top of the third
round. Yes, sorry, I'm bringing it up. My computer's a little slow. But at the top of the third round, Darius Alexander. This is getting an A from me. I really loved Darius Alexander. He was a top 50 player in the class to me. I believe I had him at about 34. Just the main reason he fell is he's an older prospect. He's 24 years old. I understand that. But man, monster pass rusher out the box. I think he's a damn good run defender as well. I think putting him next to a guy like Dexter Lawrence, who's going to demand double teams, is going to do wonders for Darius Alexander, especially early on in his career. There's not a whole lot to say other than really quality player at a very high value pick.
Yeah, he's almost like. Wait, did you say you had him at 44 or 34?
34.
Okay, I had him at 44, so 10 spots down. I thought we had him at the same spot. I equated him in my comp. I have a little book for it. I put interior defensive lineman version of Donovan Ezaraku. This is a dude with an insane bag, great bend, not the craziest athlete, but is serviceable. And I think day one as a running mate to Dexter Lawrence, that's fun. I think this is one of the better spots that he could have landed in. And he's an extremely polished rusher. And it's just one of those guys. I love watching dudes who can pass rush out of the interior. Him, Omar Norman-Lott, and Derek Harmon out of Oregon, who end up there's three guys that I just love watching, man. He's going to be extremely fun. And again, the versatility that defensive line can pull off and how many looks they can give you is scary once you're talking about second and long, third down. Defenses or offensive lines should be afraid of what the Giants are cooking up right now.
Absolutely, because you look at it on paper, Abdul Carter, Darius Alexander, Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns. Those are four dudes who can get to the quarterback at a very, very high rate.
Yeah.
That is terrifying, and it's what you need in this division. That you have the Cowboys, who just, they've put a lot into the offensive line over these last couple of years. They just spent
three other last first-round picks.
Exactly. The Philadelphia Eagles have the best offensive line in football. Like, you have to be able to get to the quarterback if you want any chance in this division. This is how you do that. What was your grade on this pick?
This one, I gave an A+.
All right, there you go.
I really liked the pick.
Yes. Going to their fourth round pick now. A fan favorite in Cam Skattebo. I'll start with you for this one. What was your grade on Skattebo and his fit with the Giants?
I gave it a B. I think he fits well with Tyrone Tracy. I have a tweet up that it went extremely viral that said in 1968, Cam Skattebo would have been the first overall pick. You can imply what that joke means, but yeah, I'm not as low on Cam Skattebo as some people were. I think he's a good player, man, and I think he's a nice change of pace, thunder to somebody's lightning. He's probably the best bruising, powerful back in the class. Maybe you want to give it to Ashton Jency, wouldn't hate it. I think I'd give it to Cam Skattebo. I did like his game a lot. I think fourth round pick is good value. Maybe he's not ever a bell cow. It's a fourth round pick. Who cares? He's absolutely going to be a contributor for them, and I like it. I like it in tandem with Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary if he's still there. Can't remember.
Right. I agree. I like Skattebo. He was my fifth ranked running back in this class, and you're not taking him to be. You don't. I don't think there's a world where Scadaboo's some elite running back in the
Oh,
NFL, and I think most people agree.
yeah.
But as a complimentary, like powerful rusher who can provide for you on third down as both a pass protector and as a pass catcher, I think that's very valuable, and that's going to get a B+ grade on my end. I like it. And then we get to one of the just best picks in this draft. I cannot believe how far he fell. I don't know if it's been reported yet, if it was injuries or teams were just that low on him. But Marcus Mbao, that's an A+ for me.
As well.
This is unbelievable value for sure. Not the biggest lineman in the world. You're looking at a guy who's about 300 pounds. You're looking at a guy who, the power doesn't show up on tape. And I understand, well, maybe that kept teams away from him. But damn well that athleticism does. That ability to he doesn't get beat outside. He doesn't get beat outside. He is such a great blocker out in space in the screen game once he gets going on those zone running plays, which I think is a good fit with this offense and what they want to do. Sure, you are not going, like, you put him in a gap scheme, things aren't going to go well.
Yeah.
You put him in a zone scheme like this one, he's probably a day one starter. Like,
That's what I was going to say. Are you starting Greg Van Roten over him?
No,
I don't think
we're not starting Greg Van Roten over him. This is a day one starter in the 5th round, and that's easily deserving of an A+.
Absolutely. I have no idea why he fell either. I was trying to find, like, was there injury? Did he do some freaky like Mike Green and Maxwell Harrison did? And even though they were top picks, but no, I couldn't find anything. And yeah, I think he's a dude that starts for them day one. I think it's definitely top 5 value in the draft for me, man. The Giants killed it all around. That one is another A+ for me as well.
Yeah, and there is one more guy in this class I really want to talk about, and that is Thomas Fidone, the tight end out of Nebraska. I was unbelievably high on Fidone as a player. I actually had him as my 5th ranked tight end.
Wow.
I loved what I saw from Fidone, and I more so loved what I saw from him as a developmental piece. This is a tight end, 6'5", 250. He's got 34-inch arms. He's got 94th percentile hands, like at least in size wise, and it shows on tape. He catches everything that comes his way. Insane catch radius, has vertical speed to take the top off of a defense. Not a great route runner, but nuanced enough to get it done if he's one-on-one in man coverage. I think there are some definitely, and before I get to the limitations in this game, he's also a damn good blocker. Really, really good blocker that still has a lot of room to fill out his frame and use those 34-inch arms more. Tenacious, has that nasty mentality. I'm sure the main reason he fell is he is almost a non-factor after the catch, which I understand why. Being a factor after the catch is so huge in today's NFL when it comes to tight ends. But when you've also got a guy that I think you can throw the ball up to and he'll come down with it, I think it's a big deal. And a guy that can develop into, once he puts on more weight into that frame, I think he is somebody who can be better after the catch. But getting a guy like him, who I expected more to go into the 4th, 5th round, to get him in the 7th round where they did, I think that's amazing value. Amazing value.
Yeah, you mentioned he wasn't like the best route runner in the world, but most of the guys at tight end who aren't good route runners just move a little clunkily. Like everyone's polarizing. Harold Fannin, he just moves like a duck. He's a little goofy. He doesn't move goofily. He's surprisingly smooth with it, even if it's not like, he's not the quickest dude in the world, which
he's kind of the opposite of Fannin in the sense of, like, once Fannin gets the ball in his hands, he's a much better player.
Yeah.
Once Fidone gets the ball in his hands, he is not as good of a player, but beforehand it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So I do really like the pick of Fidone here. Now comes the grade. What is your final grade on this not Jacksonville? Sorry, I saw Jackson Dart and I was like Jacksonville on this Giants draft.
I graded them as the highest in the division. They are an A. Not only just my individual, but cumulative as well, even with the Jackson Dart pick.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I think this would have been an A+ without the Jackson Dart pick for me. This easily an A+, but this is going to be an A. uh, we might look back and maybe Jackson Dart's good, and this is one of the better draft classes we've seen in recent
Yeah,
memory because I think
it
it
does
really
have that
has a
potential.
chance to be. But I just have I don't have faith in
Me
Jackson Dart.
neither.
I'm
And
sorry.
like, if they took like, even if they didn't take Shador, it was like QB2 on my board. If they
If it
took
was
Jalen Milrow, I would
if it
have.
was
Oh,
Milrow, it would
God.
have been awesome.
Yeah,
I'm not a big Shuck guy, but like if it was Shuck, I think I would have been more okay with it.
yeah.
I like Shuck more than I like Dart. I just I don't get the pick, but Giants. Otherwise, I really loved what you guys did in this draft. We move on to the Commanders, the last team in this division. Uh, kind of probably the weaker of the four drafts here, but
I'm glad you said it.
there was at least a pick in here I very much loved. But to
Yeah.
start us off, Josh Connerly in the first round. Not the biggest Connerly guy in the world. I know a lot. I know some other people were much higher on him. Not for me. What's it called? What was your grade on Connerly?
Look, I'm an Oregon fan. I'll always support him, even if he's a Commander. And I get the thought process behind wanting to take a good athlete when it comes to tackles in a division with now Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, Micah Parsons. I understand the thought process behind it. He's so weak, man. He's so weak. I mean, we're talking, is it the Senior Bowl where it was, where you get speed depowered by Donovan Ezeraku? Brother.
No, are you talking about the Mike Green clip?
Yeah, oh, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's
Yes.
Mike Green. That's right. You're getting speed depowered by Mike Green? Dude, come on. That's not Shamar Stewart you're getting thrown around by. That's a dude
He got tossed.
Yeah.
Tossed.
thrown around by one of the lighter edge rushers in this class. And like the guys that are fast in this division on the edge, Abdul Carter and Micah Parsons, they still can convert that speed to power exceptionally well.
Specifically in Parsons' case.
Yes. Like I see him getting manhandled by Michael Parsons, especially if he starts day one. Maybe they don't start him day one. They get him in the weight room and put on a few pounds and make him stronger than he already is, and he ends up being a good player because he is a great athlete. But I just worry about that strength. It's really concerning. And like you said, Josh Simmons was on the board. I don't know how much I love it. I gave it a C-. I'm glad you said you didn't like the Commanders draft that much, because I already have a bad rep with Commanders fans who think I hate their team, even though I don't. But yeah, I wasn't a big fan of that thing.
Yep, I'm in the same boat. I gave it a C. Connor, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Connerly is a great athlete. I think he's a fantastic pass protector when dealing with those speed rushers along the outside, and he's not somebody who's going to get beat often.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he is somebody that I thought needed at least a year, maybe two, in an NFL weight room to get more play strength, because he doesn't have much of any. You see it in the run game. Despite him being athletic as hell, going into his own scheme, he's not exactly pushing people around. And you see it as a pass protector, where he struggles with bigger, more powerful pass rushers. And that's going to continue at the next level, unfortunately. Not very big. I get it. The reason it's not lower is I get it in the sense of wanting to put an agile offensive lineman in this scheme that runs a lot of screens, that you want to get Jaden Daniels out on the move. You pull a lot of tackles and guards. That is what Kingsbury wants to do. And in that regard, I can see it. And I would love it even more if they were okay with starting Andrew Wiley at right tackle for another year, just so they can put more play strength on Connerly. But I don't love him as an immediate starter. And I do just, again, Josh Simmons was on the board. Modern medicine people. The Chiefs understand it. You guys need to understand it too.
Yeah. You bring up a good point with the quick game, and maybe they never sit there and get true drop back situations enough for his play strength to really matter. And they just throw a bunch of quick stuff, and he's out there bulling over defensive backs, nickel corners, and linebackers. Then I could see it working out early on. But I think if he really wants to be like a shutdown tackle, he's definitely got to hit the weight room.
Yes, without a doubt. But then we get to their second round pick in Trey Amos, and this is the one pick in this draft class where I'm very, very excited to see how he fits here.
Yeah.
Trey Amos, this is actually an A+ for me.
Really?
I had Amos as a top 30 player. I had him as my 5th overall corner. I see him as a very, very high floor prospect. I don't really see Amos in this opportunity to be an elite guy at the next level, but I also don't see a world where he's bad. He reminded me, he's kind of the I have that same mentality when it comes to Emeka Egbuka, in the sense of just like I don't see a world where he's bad.
Yeah.
Trey Amos is that kind of player. He's a great scheme fit into what Dan Quinn wants to do. It's a team that desperately needed corner, and to get him at 61 when he was, 30 on my board, great value. That's enough for an A+ on my end.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the scheme fit. I felt like it was one of the better player to team fits in the draft. I think it's also funny they're so scared off by like these Emmanuel Forbes type players. I think that they wanted to get like a big physical dude, even though Trey Amos isn't the greatest tackler himself. But they wanted to move off of these slow, small corners, small, weaker corners like St. Just and Emmanuel Forbes, and bring in a Trey Amos type. I do like it. This team desperately needs some corner help. It was probably the weakest part of their defense. Maybe you want to give it to edge, to each their own, but I think it's like 1A, 1B situation there. But yeah, the scheme fit is what really moved me in this particular pick. One of the worries I had with him is because Ole Miss ran so much cover 3, is he going to be able to come in and run man cover 1 consistently? Is he going to be able to play the flat in cover 2? But he gets into a spot where they run a lot of cover 3. I think that is perfect for him and success in the NFL.
Yep, and then we get to this is probably the last pick we're going to talk about when it comes to the Commanders. The other two happen to be in the 6th and 7th rounds. I didn't watch them.
Krosky Merritt film?
I cannot say with certainty that I've watched Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt at all, but we're going to talk about their 4th round pick in Jalen Lane, wide receiver out of Virginia Tech. And this is, it's going to be a C from me. Jalen Lane, I watched a little bit of, and I refreshed myself on this morning actually to watch. He's fast. It showed up at the combine, shows up on tape. He can take the top off of a defense, but it kind of feels like that's all he is. He is a field stretcher. He's not a great route runner. I don't think his hands are particularly good, especially if somebody is in his pocket. He's not somebody who's going to go up and catch a football. His short area quickness isn't what you like to desire. Like, I don't think he's particularly great with the ball in his hands either. This is just literally, I need somebody to run down the field and potentially get open and break away. Jalen Lane can do that. Which, I mean, has a role. They lose Diami Brown, who was kind of that role on this team, it felt like. And Jalen Lane can come in and do that if needed. But I do think there were just some better options on the board. It could have been used on another position or even another receiver at that point.
Yeah, I gave it a C+ just because I think Jaden Daniels would probably like him a lot. Jaden Daniels loves to throw that deep ball. That's something I think they can connect with maybe a couple years down the line. I think he was a punt returner at Virginia Tech, is what I read. Maybe he has some value on special teams in that regard. Didn't watch too much of him, though. I watched a little bit of him, or not a little bit. I just kind of like seeing him out of the corner of my eye when I was watching Tootin, the running back out there.
Right.
But, yeah. Maybe he fits well with Jaden Daniels, and maybe it's a fun connection. Don't ever think he's like wide receiver 1 out there or anything. And
then I'll mention Kane Medrano, the linebacker out of UCLA. Just because you glance at him when you're watching Schweichinger, however you say his last name, I always butcher it, but Carson, the linebacker that went to the Browns, you saw a little bit of him. He's played a lot of football. He's a 6-year senior. He was a team captain. He's a good tackler. He's probably somebody who can play with special teams for them. His coverage ability is, I think, pretty good, but that's what you expect from a guy who's 220 at the linebacker position. Just somebody I wanted to mention. Probably, like, he can make the team as a special teamer, I think, because he was a core special teamer for the Bruins as well. It wasn't just that he was team captain. He was playing linebacker. He was playing special teams for him. And that's always nice to get in the 6th round.
Quintessential Dan Quinn linebacker there. He loves dudes who are too small to defend the run, but are fast as hell and can cover. And work sometimes, especially when your team is rushing the passer well, but sometimes you get a Packers-Cowboys playoff situation where you get dog walked because you can't stop the run.
Yes, sometimes you do. But that was it when it comes to grading these individual draft classes. Now, if you were to put them in terms, actually, wait, we did forget to give this one a letter grade. What is your letter grade for this
I
community
gave
draft?
it a C. Just kind of whatever.
Yeah, that's about where I'm putting it. I'm going to give it a C as well. Part of me, I think I am going to bump it up to a C plus because I do think that Amos pick was so good, and they didn't have a lot of draft picks in general. But nevertheless, probably the worst of them. But how would you rank in terms of all four of them? The
I'm putting
draft
Giants number
classes.
one. Giants for the draft. I definitely loved the best. Their defensive line is going to be just fun to watch. And, the second was the Cowboys. Don't call me a homer, but I think they did get some good players, a lot of day one contributors. It was a bit of a meat and potatoes draft. I'm very thankful they didn't overdraft a receiver at 12, to be honest. And the Eagles are third, and then the Commanders are in last at fourth with the C grade.
And I completely agree with you. What puts the Cowboys over the Eagles for me is they straight up their first three picks were three players in my top 50.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good process. So, I'm not saying I know everything, but at least from my eyes and me giving out grades, I do like who they picked.
Yeah, and
So
I love the fact that they went trenches too. That's
exactly. First two picks are in the trenches, and then you go get a corner who can really develop into a top guy at the next level. I think that's great process on their end.
Got a special guest making
Special guest from the dog. That's a win. But thank you everybody for tuning in to the first episode of our 2025 NFL draft grades. Thank you so much to Taggartkent for taking the time to come on,
Of course, thank
drop
you.
some ball knowledge. If you want to follow him, he is at Taggartkent on TikTok, at Taggartkent on X or Twitter. So make sure you go follow him. He makes some great content. Again, very happy he was on. But thank you all so much for watching. Make sure you like, subscribe. They're going to be coming out every other day, I believe, is how this is going to work. And next is going to be the AFC East, where I'm going to be having Elite Takes or Nico. If you watch my content, I'm positive you watch his content. So make sure you stick around and look out for that. See you guys later.